attended a lot of IU basketball games, so you coming from my side of the river there, so that's pretty cool. But
I'm a passionate IU basketball fan.
Well, hey, that's good. We like that. All right, so do people who are committed to their Christian faith give more money away than those who are not religious? I mean, did you look into that when you were doing the study?
We did. We researched this question extensively. So the average American gives 2 or 3% of his or her income away. The average Christian gives 2 or 3% of his or her income away. So there's no difference between the average American and the average Christian. That said, we all know that our country is sort of Christian by history, and many people identify as Christian. So as you start to filter down for things like church attendance or involvement in Bible studies, that is, you might call it a measure of devotion, then giving goes up quite a bit, up into the 6% range. And then if you apply income filters on top of that, so if you really filter that down on those who are involved in their church and also have the capacity to give more, it goes up in the 8 to 10% range.
Wow, how interesting. So the average Christian gives only 2 to 3, and this includes their quote-unquote tithe.
That's right. Which means they're not tithing.
Right. Well, yeah, they're not. Well, and I guess, some of us have this standard in our head of 10%, and, of course, I know God says to be a cheerful giver and give as you have been blessed. And so sometimes that might exceed 10%. But, you write that Jesus was clear about what Christians are supposed to do with their money. What are the biggest ways we miss his message, Greg?
I think that the biggest traps that we, especially as Americans, fall into, there's 2 of them. One is lack of contentment, and 2 is fear. In terms of lack of contentment, this is the proverbial keeping up with the Joneses. We always want more and more and more, and eventually we start to idolize stuff. We're a very material culture. And even many Christians who recognize that and try to fight against it, let's not pretend that we have not succumbed to it somewhat. So when we try to find satisfaction in stuff, we miss God's message about finding satisfaction in him and in participating in his mission. The second, then, is fear. Once we do accumulate a lot, and I think we probably, we all know the story of Scrooge. When we do accumulate a lot, we become so fearful of losing it, and we grasp it so tightly that it prevents us from being open-handed toward God and his people.
Hey. Interesting. So you talk about 7 core principles that you outline for biblical wealth and giving. Can you share with us some of those?
Sure. So when John and I began our research, we read the entire Bible from front to back, trying to catalog all of the verses that had anything to do with money. And there's actually over 2,000 of them. But that was too many for our brains, so we had to synthesize that down into a shorter list. You could call it a cliff notes of sorts. And that's what those 7 key principles are. They are for us sort of the primary lessons that God teaches about money. A few of them include one, and the first one, which I believe is the most important one, is that everything we have truly belongs to God. Now, I think if you asked any Christian that, they'd agree with that statement. But the truth is that many of us, including myself, before God changed my heart on this topic, don't really live like that. So once we actually embrace that idea, we then are led to the second principle, which is that, therefore, everything ought to be used for God's purposes. If it's all his to begin with, then it should be used for his purposes. And that doesn't mean we give everything away. It means we responsibly provide for our family, according to 1 Timothy 6, and it means we responsibly save for retirement, according to many verses in Proverbs. But anything above and beyond that, we ought to contribute back to God's kingdom. And then the final principle I'll touch on is the last one, which is that being generous unlocks the chains that money often has over us. The Apostle Paul, he doesn't condemn those who have money. He condemns the love of money. I think we all know people who have succumbed to the love of money. Being generous is a great antidote to the lack of contentedness and the fearfulness I described earlier.
Well, you talk in your book, and I'm not going to let you get away without me asking this, because the curiosity is just killing this cat. How old are you?
I'm 30.
You sound very young, and you're very wise to be as young as you are. So I'm quite impressed. All right. So you talk about spenders, savers, and servants. Give us an idea of what you mean by these and how they play out in our lives or should play out.
Sure. So John and I researched hundreds of families on their wealth and giving habits, and eventually we realized that there's two archetypes of families in terms of their orientation toward money. That is families who are sort of savers at heart, and then those who are spenders at heart. Those who are savers find a lot of security in their net worth, and they think about saving up for retirement, maximizing their 401k, where spenders, on the other hand, are those who, as soon as they get their next paycheck, they're thinking about, the new thing they can buy with it, a trip to the mall or whatever. And, I would argue that most of us fit one of those two archetypes. But then there were a minority of families in our research who were just living fully, boldly and audaciously for God in the area of generosity. And we realized that their primary mindset toward money was servanthood. So if they got an extra dollar, they're thinking about, how can I honor God with this? And so what John and I did, and it was kind of funny, John is a saver by nature, and I'm a spender, so we even disagreed with each other, but we both did agree that we ought to orient ourselves as servants. And so much of our journey was, how could we transition from being a spender or a saver toward being a servant?
Well, interesting, very interesting. Tell us how we can get this book, because it is full of really fabulous information, and there's so much that we can't touch on in this short time, but tell us where we can get the book.
Sure. So the book is called God and Money, How We Discovered True Riches at Harvard Business School, and it is available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble's website, as well as in Christian bookstores and some Barnes & Noble locations around the country. And you may also visit our website, which is godandmoney.net.
godandmoney.net. And the millennials might like reading this, because I know that often they're accused of being selfish, but you point to a lot of stories of young people who are radically generous, so just that we've got just another few seconds. What do you think that makes a difference in some millennials as opposed to others?
Yes, that's right. I would consider myself to also be one of these selfish millennials, and I think in many ways that's true about us. But at the same time, our generation is also passionate about social justice. That's something that in terms of things like equality and poverty eradication and distribution of healthcare services, that's also a big hot topic for our generation. And I think that Christians need to be leading that conversation. And I would argue that's not been happening recently. So in my opinion, the topic of generosity is a way that Christians can really speak the language of millennials around social justice, but then attach it to the gospel message in terms of what God would have us do with generosity. So for me, it's a big evangelism opportunity for my generation.
Well, God bless you, Greg. Thanks so much for sharing this. And it's wonderful information, a fabulous book. And again, you can pick it up on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, any of your stores. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Y'all keep it up, guys. You're young. You're going to be some great leaders for tomorrow.
Thanks.
All right. Guys, don't go away. We'll be back.
WFIA, The Spirit. It's like the rebirth the world feels during spring. The new life when there was none, and the hope of real growth and wonder, like the kind of wonder of joining Alistair Begg on a magnificent Mediterranean journey.
Have you ever wondered what it would have been like to travel the dynamic missionary journeys of the Apostle Paul, to see for yourself the sights of the early Christian church? This is Alistair Begg, inviting you to join me this fall on the footsteps of the Apostles' Mediterranean cruise. Together, we'll encounter the sights of the early church like never before, with wonderful stops in Rome, Naples, Jerusalem, Athens, and more.
It's an unforgettable 15 days on 2 continents, sailing on one of the newest cruise ships, the beautiful Silhouette.
And we'll experience the magnificent Sistine Chapel, the historic Western Wall in Jerusalem, the beautiful Greek island of Santorini, and much more in luxurious accommodations over the pristine waters of the Mediterranean.
Get more information at WFIAFM.com and click on the Footsteps of the Apostles banner.
Did you know by age 50, half of all men have an enlarged prostate? This means more trips to the bathroom, longer time in the bathroom, waking at night to go, or issues in your romantic life. If this sounds familiar, call us now. because we're shipping free bottles of Super Beta Prostate to listeners of this station. Super Beta Prostate is a non-prescription formula guaranteed to reduce the symptoms of your